Andre, my friend Andre, it's so
Hey,
wonderful to be with you today.
hey, Ben, it's really good to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Everybody, I want to introduce you to Andre Martin if you haven't met him. He is the author of this phenomenal book, Wrong Fit, Right Fit, Why How We Work Matters More Than Ever. He's a culture strategist at Joyful and an ex-chief talent and learning officer at Google, Nike, Mars, and Target. Deeply experienced, phenomenal writer and speaker. Um, every moment I get to connect with Andre is a good one for me. And I'm hoping that you all just enjoy 10 minutes of Andre and I kicking around a topic that's dear to both of our hearts. So, Andre, I'm going to tee this up, and then
Okay.
I want us to explore this. And for anybody who's playing along, I would buy Andre's book, but I'm talking about pages 204 to 207, which I think are phenomenal. So, Andre, I want us to explore this space where we're talking about a team leader. And yes, this could be a manager, somebody who manages people, but I'm talking more about, and we all find ourselves in these team leadership situations, regardless of the level we're at in the organization. And so, how does that team leader role come to life for a person who is trying to help a team find a sense of trust or psychological safety or improve their collaboration or take responsibility for owning and resolving conflict, the hard things? Um, like, this is a crucible, like a place where interesting and sometimes hot stuff happens. And so, and these team leaders are often not equipped for the role. We haven't trained them or selected, and yet here they are. So pragmatism ruling the day. What can you and I give these folks in terms of just tips, tricks, encouragement, wisdom that we've seen people gain over time about team leaders and their effectiveness at leading teams? What do you think? Help us dive in.
Hey, I love the topic. It's one I think you and I have been thinking about for a long time, Ben. And I always start with just what you said at the very top, right? Is the first thing you have to do is you have to realize that that moniker of manager actually gets you oriented to the wrong consumer, right? If you think
Mm,
about sort of the consumer, as your employee, often when we think manager, we think my job is to delegate work, it's to support an individual, it's to get the highest level of productivity out of the person in front of me. And in the end, this is what in the book, I was like, God, we just have to reframe that.
yeah.
So most people don't lead singular people. And if they do, it's an org design problem, right? They lead teams and groups. And the greatest sort of asset you can have is to see yourself as the person who is trying to create the conditions for lightning to strike,
Mm.
right? Amongst a big group of people with diverse needs and desires. And I think that the starting point is just how can you not let that narrowed title that you have narrow the focus that you bring to the role?
You said that so succinctly. Thank you. And I think that isn't that the power of like assumptions and cultural expectations? Like somehow your job gets described in a job description as manager, right? And then what comes embedded are all these like I have to manage person A and manage person B and manage person C. And you look around and oh, and now my organization tells me I have to coach them too. So I better learn some coaching skills. And then we have to think about development plans for each one of these individuals. And what we missed is actually, I think, 80%, 90% of the fun and the interesting part, which is like, how do all these people connect? How are they finding ways to collaborate without needing a manager
That's right.
to instruct them how to go talk to somebody in a different function or a different area? Like, what are the ways? What have you seen? What are some of the initial, very small things that team leaders can do to begin to see people in a different way or change these assumptions about these people here and now?
Yeah, I think the first thing for me, Ben, is one of the greatest things you can do as a team leader is give people a unified sense of purpose
Mm,
and direction, right? I always come to these coaching assignments or the roles I used to have by saying, "Hey, I've got a highly talented, fully adult set of people sitting here with me. So the only two things I got to do is one, give them a clear sense of purpose and direction. So make sure they know like what we're just trying to accomplish. And then secondly, create enough conversation arenas where we can find the best possible idea from the diverse sets of experiences, characteristics, and people who are sitting around the table. Right. And it makes it sound really easy when you say it that way, right? Just give them a sense of purpose and direction. And then secondly, your only other job is to find the best idea. And when you find it, you got to put all of your energy, all of your resources, all of your time behind those things that are actually going to make a difference.
So it's that deep sense of clarity, right? That because once we can see the emerging clarity around purpose, we could start there. Then we can be able, as individuals, is to connect our role and our responsibilities to that purpose. And what I think often happens in teams is like people go like, that's not perfectly clear. I don't see exactly, well, first of all, my role may not be clear, and I may not understand your role, or we may not understand each other's role. And then somehow they have to ladder up to a purpose. So there can be like some not good fit, right? And almost to the title of your book, wrong fit, right fit. Like so people actually need to actively help create that fit. Is that part of this process of becoming more of a congealed team?
100%. And one of the things, like when anyone takes a seat on a team at a table around a video, the inherent question you're asking is, how can I be of service?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really think at our core, we pop on a video with 12 other people. We're really sort of at our core wanting to be able to answer that question. And often, what happens, especially to first-time team leaders, is they don't understand that that's how people are coming, right? Or because of all the other things we're worried about, am I good enough? Am I doing the right things? Am I trying to be the right sort of leader for them? We lose sight of that everyone comes, I believe. Now, I'm an idealist, but I believe everyone comes to that table saying, what do you need and how can I help? And so our job then is to say, hey, here's the mission that we're on. Here's the thing that we're fighting for. And so, I always think about team leadership is you need to have some rituals, right? Some things that you do just repeatedly that gets people re-recruited back to the team. And secondly, you need to have ground rules for behavior, right? Or rules of engagement. And so one ritual that I love is every time a team comes together, the first thing you should do, regardless of all the other tasks, you should ask everyone to put voice to, what are we fighting for? Right? Just open that up, right? Remind people of, hey, for all the dregs of the day, for all the hardship of, the back-to-back meetings, for all the pressure on our teams when we're under-resourced and very leveraged, is just start there. Like, what are we fighting for? And when people can start the conversation from that place, it really starts to increase psychological safety, right? And then starts to decrease all the noise of, all the context around us, which often gets in our way of showing up fully and completely. Does that make sense to you?
Right. It does. And I want to tell you what I heard when you said it, because I heard it the way you meant it. Like, what's the thing we're fighting for, right? But if you took the same words and you just put a different emphasis on it, it's like, what are we fighting for? Why are we fighting with each other? What and actually I'd be really curious to ask both questions, because you said a moment ago, like, here come these fully functioning adults, and let's please start there. But then we look at people and we don't understand their behaviors, and there's such a diversity, not just of perhaps observable characteristics, but there's diversity in how we approach conflict, or how we're attached, how we feel an attachment style, or there's all sorts of things that we can't see that drive deep difference. And then we watch each other's behavior and you're like, oh my goodness, can you believe that? And they don't look, we all at some moments don't look like fully functioning humans to each other.
We
I
don't.
love it when we make that assumption. And then here come the gaps and the misses and the times for repair and the places where we've just really missed each other.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we aren't anywhere operating in the same conversation. And I'm wondering, is there something we could tell aspiring team leaders, like in these moments where it does feel broken or fractured, or, oh my goodness, everybody's just rolling their eyes at that person, and it doesn't feel like we're anywhere close to even the sum of our parts, more than, or what are we fighting for? Like, why are we spending our rare and valuable time together fighting? So what do we do? How do we help shift that? How do we help team leaders create a little bit of space where they can reframe the conversation? Anchoring into purpose, yep. Creating clarity, yep. But maybe finding that courage inside them. How do we do that?
It's a great question, Ben. I mean, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. I was going to go to a little bit of a different place, which is, I always want new team leaders to be able to back up from the moment they're in, zoom out from the chaos of whatever you're in, and really start to look at, like, why is this happening? Often what happens to team leaders is we get into the muck, right? And once we do, we can't see, can't assess, can't sort of stand back, open our eyes really wide, and ask the question of what is standing in our way or causing this to feel like a fight. And there's a couple things, right? We know there's a failure of purpose. We talked about it. We know there's often a failure of process, right? The very nature of the conversations we're having aren't $1 million conversations. So people get frustrated because it feels like we're wasting time on things that don't matter, right? So the courage thing for a leader in that moment, if it's a failure of process, right, we're not having the right conversations, is to not allow the conversations that we shouldn't be having to come into that space, right? And it's not just agenda setting, it's actually saying, hey, as a leader, there are a series of conversations that will benefit from being all together. And those should be $1 million conversations. And if you're a team leader, I would bet when you were or I was, there were so many times we weren't having $1 million, $1 billion conversations, but we let them roll. And so having the courage to first see it and then just stop it and say, hey, that's not a conversation that is worth our time together. Let's move in a different direction. I think there's also this interesting one, Ben, that has been on my mind lately, which is there's a failure of identity. I think often when people come to teams, we don't hold the same hierarchy of identity. And I'll give you an example, right? So let's say you and I are a team. I walk into the team and my hierarchy of identity is I'm putting myself first, and then I'm putting my other team first, and then I'm putting the company first, the consumer first, and then last not least is the team that I'm a part of right here. Well, if I come in that way, I'm orienting the whole conversation to optimize for that hierarchy of identity. And so the other thing for a team leader to do is just to make sure that everyone in that room, everyone on that team has that same hierarchy. That is, we are putting the customer first, the company second, this team third, right? Ourselves or our other team, and then ourselves last. And I think if we can get that oriented, that takes care of a lot of the issues. And then there's just failures of trust, which is a larger, bigger, deeper problem that I think often team leaders need to solve outside the room and with individuals to sort of build that sense of rapport, trust, and safety that's going to help them sort of come then together as a collective. What do you think? Any of that resonate?
It all resonated with me. Let me summarize, and I'm going to add a fourth. So you talked about kind of going up to the balcony, looking at the patterns of conversations. What am I seeing? What are we seeing as we look at our conversations? The second was a issue of identity, like who am I here, and what am I bringing, and who are we all here, and what are our priorities? And the third is trust, which can be just interpersonal between a couple of people. I'm going to maybe double down on that third one and say I think for the team leader, but also for team members, it's about restoring humanity. I think it's so convenient for us just to see each other as roles, finance, HR, as badge colors, lanyard colors, as somebody who's remote rather than on site. As and the fact is, as we do that, we just erode away the true sense that we're all humans, and that I think when I'm coaching teams, especially new teams, but any team, I think part of our work inside of a team is to restore our sense that you're actually a full person
Yeah.
and you're actually behaving in ways that make perfect sense to you. And that we can make an assumption we're all striving our best and bringing what we have in this moment here. And it's invariably not perfect. And yet, I think getting back to that sense of then we can have room for compassion and grace and healthy boundaries and a deeper sense of understanding where you're not trying to fix me and I'm not trying to fix you. We're actually finding that space between us that works well.
Ben, I love that. And, there's a couple rituals that I feel like are really helpful to a team leader to use to get to that. One of the first ones is, I'm a big believer in inspiration as a fundamental way that we can get ourselves up out of our own way and start to restore humanity. I mean, we used to in teams do inspiration doses at the start of every meeting. 5 minutes, Tell me about something that's been on your mind that you found is really interesting and how it might relate to the team. That moment of sort of pulling inspirational energy into a team, man, it can just change the vector. You can move in an entirely different direction. And so inspiration, right, is a great way to sort of get people to start the meeting from a place of humanity, a place of curiosity, a place of personal interest about you bringing something to us that then maybe might give me a little bit more of a boost as we walk into a difficult conversation. The other one is positive gossip, right? I just think we don't spend enough time looking for the good or the great in ourselves, in our teams, in our surrounding stakeholders. And so again, tail end of a meeting, 5 minutes, like let's do some positive gossip about someone who's showing up in a way that is consistent with our sort of our best, our team at our best, our company at our best. And again, that has the added value of doing two things. One is it puts you in a position of having a gratitude practice, right? And just by sharing that positive gossip, you are going to do worlds of good for yourself. Secondly, it helps us calibrate what great looks like, right? And the more you have that conversation, what happens over time is we start adopting the very behaviors that we're giving people sort of positive reinforcement for. And that can over time really shift the dynamic in the team because we're all going to start orient towards that better, bigger, more positive, more idealistic version of ourselves.
What I love about that is it normalizes finding the small things.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody's going to show up to be a hero, although we have that capacity in us. I hate to say it, half of all team members are below average, which is just a joke of statistics than anything. It's not an indictment. But you know what? I'm below average a good chunk of the time, and sometimes I'm above, sometimes I'm average, sometimes I'm above average. But even when I'm not at my best, I'm doing, I hope, small things that somebody could call out and say, "Yeah, you seemed really cranky today, but I love the way you reframed that one thing for." So you asked the right question at the right moment, and that helps me get the muscle memory going. Like, no matter how I feel about myself, it's or others, it's okay. The small things can have an outsized effect on how a team finds its path to effectiveness.
I mean, Ben, you're getting into one of the pieces that was in the book that really, was important to me. And that is if there's team members sitting out here, this is the other thing is like, I'm a big believer that like, hey, we should be teaching team membership, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
team leadership, but that idea of like, if you can get people to sit in that seat in a way that sort of honors the idea of when you're a team member, here's your job. Everybody's team members. CEO is a member of a team,
Mm-hmm.
right? The head of HR is the member of a team, right? You and I both led teams and we're members of teams every day, but we often bring that leadership mentality to teams where we're being asked to be the member, right? And that's a different way of showing up. And so one of the things I'd say to the team members out there too is don't forget that you have an enormous impact on creating your team leader, right? As we go up in the organization, the thing that's true is that our jobs get harder and the feedback gets less and less because everybody wants something from you. And so I always
Totally.
tell, any team member in the world, I'm like, you can shape your team leader. Make a list of the top 10 qualities of the best team leaders you've ever had. Put that in your back pocket and carry it around every day. And the minute you see your current team leader doing one of those things, give them that feedback. Don't say, hey, boss, you did a good job. Say, hey, Ben, I really appreciate you open that meeting with an inspiration dose because I was having a bad day. And immediately in those 5 minutes, it changed my feeling and it got me in the room ready to do really good work. So I appreciate that. And you know what's great about that, Ben, is if you give that feedback, you know what happens at the next meeting? They're going to do another inspiration dose, right? Because in the end, we all want to, especially as team leaders, we want to do what's right for our team, but often we just don't know. So we end up trying to find a needle in the haystack, doing a lot of different things and just creating chaos as we go.
Totally. Yeah, that's what I want my next book to be on this topic, Andre. Just what you talked about. Like,
We're
I
cool.
don't know how we can talk about a team without talking about a team and leader as an intact ecosystem where everybody is always influencing each other, regardless of role or title. And that is, I think, where we can start to unlock real magic.
100%.
Andre, we could talk forever. I feel it. One day we will. But for now, let's put a bracket on this. Thank you so much for the wisdom you brought to this call. Um, and the best in all the many things that you got going on in your life. I know it's a lot.
Same to you, Ben. It was fantastic. And, let's get on the video again, do it again soon. There's probably 5 or 6 more conversations we could have in this space.
Totally. Thanks. Thank you.
You got it. Take care.